Hello and welcome to the programme which looks at the Holy Land. I am Paul Calvert. Psalm 98 verse 1 from the New King James Bible says this, "O sing to the Lord a new song, for he has done marvellous things. His right hand and his holy arm have gained him the victory."
I'm with Elana Heideman from Israel Forever Foundation, and the living hostages are coming home. They've been released on this historic day. How do you feel today about this whole situation?
What an overwhelming day it has been. I personally barely slept last night, and at 6:29 this morning, I already was just feeling the intensity of this real miracle that we've witnessed before us, that exactly 2 years on the eve of the Simchat Torah holiday, since the massacre took place on this very day, the living hostages were finally freed from captivity. And so it feels a little beyond comprehension. Everyone is crying. People have either glued themselves to the screen or multiple screens of different news feeds to see that they can capture every little word, every detail, every story of a family member so that we can feel with them. And that's something so unique about Am Yisrael and the Jewish people. We feel each other so intensely. There are, of course, those who went to accompany the hostage families, the extended family and friends at Hostage Square in Tel Aviv and in Jerusalem. But you should know that even in small towns around the country, people would go into what we call the kikar, the circles, the roundabouts at intersections all over the country, waving flags and that are the Israeli flag and the yellow flag, a reminder that here we are welcoming, we stand together as one. So really, it is a tremendous day. And that's just the hostage release, not to mention, of course, the arrival of President Trump having miraculously made this peace process happen. There's really just, unfortunately, so much going on also with the deceased bodies not having been returned. And already from the early hours, Hamas has made their declarations of an intent for another attack and that the war is not truly over. So today is a day that will be marked in history forever and in our hearts as we watch it play out in the days to come as well.
Yeah, today it's a very historic day because Israel has received their living hostages back. So there's no living hostages now in Gaza. You're a mother. How will the families of these hostages be feeling, do you think?
Overwhelmed with joy, concern for the well-being of the hostage. The terrible tendency is to see the hostage released and say they look good, or when the hostages say on the phone calls was something very odd that took place. The second round of hostages who were released made phone calls to their parents over WhatsApp video, handheld by Hamas terrorists. And Hamas terrorists were dictating to the families of the hostages that they should spread these videos everywhere, because the psychological tactics employed by Hamas from day one continue to be at play. And so these families have been on such a roller coaster through this psychological abuse that they have endured. And they're faced also with the physical condition of the abuse their children have endured. So I think the mothers, and we are hearing their cries, and we are seeing the father of Bar Kupperstein, whose father learned to walk and talk again so that he would be able to stand and welcome his son from captivity, and his survivor grandparents who were there to welcome him, Bar Kupperstein. And so you have these incredible family stories. And as I said, the uniqueness of our Jewish people is that we do feel each other as extended family. Mothers, I saw also, were remaking their beds. They had not touched the bedroom of their child in 2 years. But upon their welcome, they went and they changed the sheets. So there's a lot of symbolism also in the way that these families are receiving home their captives back to freedom. It's really a powerful thing. The siblings and the children, the two young children of Omri Miran who, they grew up not knowing their father. And there's another captive who's only meeting his son for the first time. So the role of the mother was carried also through the strength of the community that built themselves up for her and with her to help keep her strong so that she could stand there today, every single one of these mothers, and welcome her son home.
There is great joy. We've seen Hostage Square where they're celebrating, but there's also great sadness as well because not everybody's coming home alive. Have you received any dead hostages yet? And are we still waiting for them to be released?
At the moment, we're looking at very few, 4, maybe 6, 8. We don't know. But while some would claim, and Hamas is attempting to blame Israel for this, that it's because of the bombing that they are unable to retrieve the remains of the deceased. Unfortunately, we also know it's a ploy, yet another psychological tactic. And the 4 nations are going to be coming together to send units with bulldozers to try and recover all of the remains. It basically excuses Hamas from the responsibility. And Hamas has already started to dominate the streets of Gaza. And they have started to execute individuals who they believe were collaborating with Israel. They are abusing people openly in the streets, and they continue to use the children as their human shields. So we don't know about the bodies of the deceased, and this is a real concern for every single one of us. Many have already started taking down their flags and not wearing their pins, but this means that there are 24 hostages remains still in Gaza as of right now. Could be that more will be discovered in the coming days. It does mean that the parameters of this deal have already been violated by Hamas, and yet they will succeed because of their very intricate media propaganda campaign that is funded even by the very mediators who are trying to who made this peace process happen amongst the Arab nations. They are continuing to feed the world with the lies about Israel and Jews, and they're calling this a victory. Think about the irony there. So they've been saying that we're committing a genocide, but by returning the hostages and the war is over, now it's a victory. So there's something amiss, and we need to be very, very wary. And yes, that's why we're worried. Where there's fear still, but we are faithful people, and tonight is Simchat Torah. And we will celebrate the Torah that has guided our nation through 3,000 years of survival. So we must be able to always stand between the bitter and the sweet.
How are the hostages that have been released? Are some of them in bad condition?
Yes, they obviously they have been force-fed, and we know this already from reports that have come in, that since this process began in the recent days to a week, they have been force-feeding many of the hostages to make them look healthier. But we know that their trauma and their injuries are not only visible. So we have to be very aware of that. We know about all of the psychological tortures that were put through. Matan Engrist was very, very, his experiences were publicized, and the amount of tortures that he went through, and other survivors who had come out of captivity also shared the tortures they endured. So what we see should not determine how we judge their experience in captivity. They are skeletal. They have lost significant percentage of their body mass. They have also one has lost eyesight in one eye. We don't know about the legs yet of each of them, because that's often in the process of tortures and beating, that is an area that is often used. So we don't know, but we know that each one is being taken care of by the medical care systems of 4 different hospitals around the country. They are able to be there and be treated not only for immediate rehabilitation, but also for long-term rehabilitation, which is something that is very, very crucial. We are seeing in Israel an increase of suicide amongst those who survived October 7th. And unfortunately, they did not live long enough to see this day when our hostages would be returned home. And we have to make sure that every single one of these hostages is taken care of, and their families, And the soldiers, we cannot forget the soldiers who made all this possible. And it is quite easy for people to sometimes kind of take the soldiers for granted, and we must not, because they are very much to be thanked for their effort and everything they did to bring this miracle about.
It's a very happy day. It's a very sad day. Is it a very fearful day? 250 life sentence terrorists are going to be released.
Let's expand the number to be realistic. There are 2,000 terrorists being released. 2,000 with blood on their hands being released. People who murdered friends of mine. People who we do not know necessarily what kind of reception they're going to have other than being hailed as heroes, which only encourages them in their return to terror. So we know that 2,000 terrorists have been put back on the street. The fear is there, so is the faith in our security systems and in our network to see what we can do to mitigate the dangers and to prevent these individuals from taking more life. However, that fear, as I said, is always palpable for us. And we have to live with it, and we have to contend with it, because we know that Hamas has not been defeated in every sense of the word. And the only way that will happen is if people begin to delegitimize the ideology that Hamas has succeeded in spreading around the world. And that is the ideology of so-called Palestinianism, which is a non-existent entity. It does not exist, just as Palestine does not, nor did it ever exist. Not with borders, not with a government. It didn't exist. It has been invented, just as this people has been invented. During the course of this war, people have used more often the term Gazans instead of Palestinians. And that might actually be a more accurate term. But then what do you do about those in Judea and Samaria who have, like those in Gaza, been raised to believe that murdering Jews is their goal, that the elimination of Israel is their life goal, and that giving up their life towards that goal is the greatest thing they can do. Plus, it's quite lucrative because every one of these families gets thousands of dollars a month. So the fear is real. And we have to make sure nobody becomes October 6th complacent again. That's true in Israel. It's true around the world, too. As riots continue and more crimes are committed by people who are bringing the bringing the Intifada global, just as they've said they were going to.
It's been a very hard and painful 2 years. We must mention Roy Shalev, who was 30 years old. His girlfriend and best friend were killed, and he took his own life recently. So it's been very hard for people to cope, hasn't it?
On this, you may not know that actually on the very same day, the mother of a victim of October 7th also committed suicide that same day. We are seeing an increase of suicides. I want to make a connection, though, with the idea of survival and suicide. I did a lot of research in my years on suicide amongst survivors of Holocaust in comparison with suicide amongst survivors of other trauma, rape or abuse. And where do the suicides happen? And what percentage, what rate do they happen? Because you can turn anything into a science of what is normal behavior. Is there a normalcy to suicide after witnessing what Roy Shalev witnessed? And let's be clear about what he witnessed. He actually shielded his girlfriend with his body and absorbed the bullets into his back, but was living. And then terrorists came from the other side and murdered the best friend and the girlfriend, and Roy was left alive. They did other things as well to the girlfriend and to the friend. And these abuses became for Roy and many others just too much to ever have to live with. There are those, I believe, who in their suicide notes also had commented that they wanted to be amongst those they lost. And that's an interesting concept to explore as well, because they feel guilty for having survived, or they feel that in their death they will join their loved one, because nobody living shares their experience. That's why the communities that we mentioned for the moms are just as important for hostages and for all survivors of October 7th, the type of community that they are provided with so that they know they're not alone. But suicides are going to happen, and I don't expect that they're going to stop happening, but it does draw attention to the extreme needs we have for mental health care here in Israel, but also everywhere in the world. I think it needs to be recognized as an issue that is deserving of more attention by all humanity. I think we see that even with those who are committing mass murders, shootings in schools and places like that. Very often the defense that is offered is the defense of, well, they had mental issues. So maybe we need to be addressing mental issues in a more serious and concrete way throughout the world so that we can prevent suicide and murder alike.
Now, President Donald Trump arrived in Israel today and he spoke in the Knesset. Is this a very historic day?
It is indeed. It is only the fourth time in history that the head of another state has come and spoken in our parliament. This is the first time that Donald Trump has been in Israel since he moved the embassy to Jerusalem, which was his first act of recognition of the Jewish ancestral rights, not only to Jerusalem, but also to Judea and Samaria. And that's very important because these areas that the naive call the West Bank, but Judea and Samaria, which are their names for 3,000 years, these areas were recognized by a head of state, by Donald Trump, and it changed the pattern of recognition throughout the world. Today's declarations that he made from inside the Knesset were astoundingly powerful and passionate. And he provided for Israel an understanding of not only who he is, because he's quite a funny individual, with a wonderful sense of humor and an ability to navigate the serious and the uplifting within mere moments of the same speech. And he was able to do that here at the Knesset, prior to which, of course, many members of the Israeli government spoke praise of this historic day. What does it truly mean? There's even a gematria, the Hebraic numerical system of luck and mysticism. 7 + 3 + 8. This is the 738th day since October 7th. And 7 + 3 + 8 is 18. It is the Hebrew significance of Chai, the numerical value of Chai, life. So on this day, this historic day, President Donald J. Trump made history. And so did Bibi Netanyahu right alongside. I think this is a diplomatic relationship that should never, ever go overlooked. And it should never be discredited because of people's derangement syndromes, how much they dislike Trump and they dislike Bibi. At the end of the day, this is history in the making. And in 100 years from now and 1,000 years from now, they will still be talking about this day.
This is only the beginning of the peace deal. Are you hopeful for the rest of the deal?
I want to say yes, because we are a people of hope. I am hopeful that it will lead to good things. I do not believe that the completion of the deal will be an easy one. I don't believe Hamas is going to live up to their bargain. I do think that they maintain an image of control simply by virtue of their terror tactics. They do not, I believe, have any number-based significance, right? They lost 57,000 terrorists were taken out over the course of this war. And by the way, let's do a calculation for a second. There were 57,000 terrorists, Hamas terrorists, who were taken out, many of whom are, of course, actual civilians that become Hamas terrorists. Once you become a Hamas terrorist, you get paid by Hamas. It's actually a similar system to the way that Nazis encouraged local civilians to take part in their activism, as they called it. right? Yes, it was extremism and it was murder, but they considered it activism back then. This is true also, you should know, around the world. People who have been paid protesters, they don't need a job. And now, by the way, they've been calling for a ceasefire. Now we have a ceasefire. We actually have a peace plan, and they are all silent. They have said nothing. So one of the reasons I don't have hope is because I don't trust the world. I don't trust that this Hamas concept, and remember that the definition of Hamas is evil. There are so many sentences from the Torah, by the way, you should know, that are about this day. It's crazy, and they will be your captives. Captives will return and they will sit in your Sukkot with you and celebrate. I mean, that's really what happened today. They are coming home. They will make brachot. I can tell you they will make blessings in the Sukkot of every hospital, because every hospital in Israel has a sukkah. And every hospital in Israel, by the way, has a place where a Muslim or a Christian can pray too. So we have hope, and we will pray for it again and again. But the pro-Palestinian, call for an intifada, it's just too dangerous. And so therefore it's going to risk any complete conclusion to this peace deal.
What is your prayer for the hostages that have been released today?
Wow. I pray that they find peace in their heart, knowing that for 2 years, we have been fighting for them in every possible way. And each person took it upon themselves to do something every day. That was part of what my goal was with our organization, Israel Forever, and our global community of virtual citizens of Israel, encouraging people to do something every day. And by the way, that should not stop. We still have hostages that need to be returned to their families for a proper burial. Otherwise, Hamas will continue to hold them captive, and they will continue to use them as bargaining chips. You should know, by the way, that right before the final hours of the peace ceasefire, there was an attack by Hamas on an army base, and they announced that their intention was to kidnap soldiers. So kidnapping continues to be a tactic. We also know that the handwritten letter of Yahya Sinwar was discovered, exactly outlining 3 years prior in 2022, exactly what should take place. And that's exactly what did take place on October 7th, with the extent that it was publicized, with the extent of the brutality and the grotesqueness of their bestial behaviors, just for the sake of killing the Jew and destroying Israel. They did not succeed, and they will not succeed, but they will keep trying. My prayer for the hostages is that they gain strength and know that we will not stop our fight, even though they have now been brought home. We will make sure, as best as we can, that the world knows, learns, and does something different so that we can change the future.
What is your website for people who'd like to know more about the work that you do?
Follow us on Israel Forever Foundation on Instagram and every platform. Our website is israelforever.org, where you can find a wealth of resources, and you can join our global community of virtual citizens of Israel to find new ways that you can apply your interest in volunteerism, virtual volunteerism, and building communities local and in the cloud so that we can all be doing more. This war, this is just a chapter of it. But the global war continues, and we must never, ever, ever give up this fight. We know that those that are out there in your streets, they are thirsting for your blood. While you teach your children tolerance, they're teaching theirs how to slit your throat. They're teaching theirs how to rape and get away with it as resistance. So while we do more today with how our hearts are hanging on our sleeves, we're waiting to no longer wear these yellow pins. Once every single captive who has been murdered, they should be returned. But we know that we will always wear our Star of David. We will always wear the Magen David, which is our symbol of pride, and our menorah, and all of our symbols that we carry in order to make sure all of humanity is welcome in the house of God. And we are here to help you and help everyone make that happen. We at Israel Forever, and every Jew around you that you can connect with and build an alliance with. That's how we will continue to save the world, so that these hostages become a lesson for the next generation, and hostage taking can be never, ever, ever accepted as a 2-year 2 years we've been fighting. If on October 8th, the world had demanded that Hamas release the hostages, if every year, every month, every week since somebody had demanded, well, that's what our job is for the next generation. We must know to make our demands heard sooner and not let the extremists and the terrorists dominate and dictate how human freedoms are honored and celebrated. Our freedoms last forever, and so does the nation of Israel. Come visit israelforever.org, and I'm available for personal consulting and presentations in your community and with resources that you can use, because this battle relies on all of us for the sake of God and for the sake of man.
Well, Elana, thank you very much for sharing today.
Thank you, Paul. And Simchat Torah Sameach. Everybody in the world, every believing Christian in the world should also be celebrating the Torah, because without it, where would we be? We would be in an evil world. So let's all have this great appreciation and find a few words of Torah you can learn today.
Thank you for joining us today. Pray that God will move by his mighty power in the Holy Land and bring his peace.